You have a lot of young players trying to distinguish themselves during these skates, Ryan. How can they set themselves apart during these practices or things like that?
The big thing for a younger player is the habit and detail. Um, that if you want to be someone that coaches pay attention to as a young guy, you want to have good habits and details, and that's something that really stands out for us. Like, you watch that little commitment skate at the end, you call it, say it's 2 minutes of work. It's not overly taxing. After 3 days, it's a little bit tougher on some of the players, but I stand back and I watch, and Ryan Lomberg's an example, just won a Stanley Cup, and every time he did it full speed. And I just want some of the younger guys to recognize, like, that's what it takes to play in the NHL. Like, you know that people aren't necessarily watching you or paying attention to you, but that's what it's really about. So if a coach trusts you that you're going to do things the right way or attempt to do things the right way as a younger player, it makes it so much easier for a coach to put that guy on the ice in certain situations. So for us, it's always about those habits, details, and the play away from the puck, because what a lot of them are really good at, the offensive side of the game, that comes second. So that's typically what we would look at, and that would be the advice I would give a younger player.
What can Ryan Lomberg do for Martin Pospisil? Right? Both agitators, both hard players.
Yeah, I think we have more players besides just the two of those guys that can play hard. But Ryan plays a similar style that Marty does. Marty's kind of the newcomer. Everybody now knows Ryan with the speed that he can play the game at, and he's got that energy about him. And I think it's always, if you have two guys that, I don't want to call them reckless, but two guys play the game hard and with pace, it's nice to be able to look over and know someone's there with you. I think we have some guys in the back end that we brought in now that have the ability to play that way too, which I think is important for a group.
Mary Manov, we saw him at the end of last year, obviously, but we know he was coming off a pretty serious injury, and I have no idea how close to 100% he was. But what have you seen from him in camp, and where can he sort of pick up from where he left off?
We tasked Miro with a real challenge last year. We put him in our one of the pairs that we play against top lines. And for a guy that had only played a handful of games in the NHL, that was a pretty tall ask that we asked of him, but he did a really good job with it. And I think the one thing that we want from Miro, find a little bit more pace in his game and how he does something, so a little less defending and a little bit more checking where you're on your toes and being a little bit more aggressive. But it's using his frame and his size to his advantage. He makes really good reads with where he places his body on the ice, and once he gets the puck, he's got a really good skill set that he has the ability to move it quickly and get himself involved in the offense. But I like the size that he plays with. It's not overly physical, but he knows how to get in the way.
Is it fair to assume that with a summer of being able to actually put in work as opposed to rehab and then a full training camp, there's going to be a difference physically?
Well, physically feeling good about himself for sure. I mean, he's put the time in this summer. There's no question about that. Now, he's never going to be a imposing physical defenseman. That's just not who he is. But as I mentioned, he's got size that when he puts his body in certain places, he's a harder guy to play against. And a lot of times when, for coaches, we look at the reach. He's got a great reach, great stick, and as I mentioned, once he gets the puck, he makes good plays with it.
In your conversations with Jason LaBarbera and Dan Vladar about Vladar's game, what are you hearing, what are you seeing, and what are you expecting from Dan?
Jason has been very happy with his 3 practices. We have too. I mean, I don't often pay a lot of attention to goalies. I hate to say it. I just want to see them make saves, but he's really pleased with them, and in talking with Dan's very happy with the way he feels right now too. So we've talked a lot about the opportunity that our goaltenders have and what's in front of them, and you just want him to go out there and make saves and put his best foot forward. That's what it comes down to. He doesn't need to put undue pressure on himself to make sure he's going to start 60 or 65 games, nothing like that. It's just go out there and do what he does best, and that's stop pucks, and that's really all we want him to focus on.
And I would imagine you like this friendly competition that you've got
sure.
in camp, right? This is what you want.
There's something to be said for having a guy that you know is going to go back in the net the next night, even after a tough game. But when you have guys that are competing against each other, and we have a number of them now, there's a little bit, as much as you love the guy that you're partnered with, you want to make sure that you get the net more often than not. So you make sure that you're doing everything you possibly can do to stay in that net. And I do like it. I think it gives us an opportunity to see where both guys are going to be at early on in particular. And as we've mentioned before, fully expecting one of them to kind of grab hold of it. And when I say grab hold of it, I'm not saying it's going to start 60 games or anything like that, but a guy that, when the game's on the line, he's going to be the one guy that we're going to keep going back to.
So you'd be okay if you found yourself in a situation where whichever two goalies it is, it's like more of a tandem situation, like we see more.
There's only a few goaltenders in the league now that are capable of handling a heavy workload. So more often than not, it is a bit of a tandem thing that teams are running with, and it's something that I'm not going to say it again. It's a 41-41 split, but both guys will most definitely play for us, whoever they happen to be.
At the risk of isolating a couple of names, but are there some young guys that have been checking the boxes that you outlined earlier, just through 3 days?
You know, the one guy, and I've had such a hard time pronouncing his last name. I call him Brute. I think he's done a very good job. He seems to me like he's comfortable on the ice. I will say that he's fitting in really well. He reminds me of a young Rasmus Anderson, if there's a comparison, where they both have poise to their game. They often see the next option through the first option. So I've been really impressed with the way he's played. So he's one guy that just comes to the top of my head right now.
And now it's kind of about that next step of taking it into the game action.
For sure. Yeah. So you notice that even with some of the younger guys and conversations that you have with them, the pace of the last 3 days is significantly different from what they saw. And all that we ask of them is that they get better and better every day. So they make sure they put the work in, and they start feeling better about themselves having to execute at a higher pace.
I just talked with Walker Dewar, and he said, look, it's no secret last year didn't go the way he wanted it to, but what do you want to see from him different this year?
The one thing for Walk is we know how fast he skates. He's got a rocket of a shot, and he's a big body, and those are all things that we really want to see in our lineup. So for him, it's staying true to that identity of more or less being an up and down his wing guy that does a great job of pressuring defense into mistakes, and using his speed to get in on forward checks and creating problems for his line mates. So he has to be a responsible player for us. That's really what we're looking for out of him, and we want to see him do it consistently, shift after shift after shift, but it's also game from game to game.
Not to double back to Pospisil, but what are qualities and aspects of his game that make you feel comfortable giving him a shot at center?
Well, it's new for me. I haven't seen him play in the middle, so I'm going a little bit on what I've seen on TV and watching some video of him, and I know he was a centerman when he was a younger guy. I do like the size in the middle of the ice. I think that's important. I think the skating ability that he has is important as well. And he's also a guy he's shown last year that he's able to play with your high-end players. So he can make plays at the same time as staying physical and using a speed that we all know he does so effectively. So it's a little bit of a learning experience for us here. We're trial and error, maybe, if you will, and we'll see how he does his first exhibition game there.
Would you like to see Connor Zary get reps at center at some point in camp too?
We have a number of guys that we're going to give opportunities to in the middle of the ice, yeah.